Hi everyone, this is a video 104 that's kind of introducing you to Logic and to this first project in Electronic Music 1. Okay, so when you launch Logic, and in class we've gone over a few things that you may need to set up depending on whether it's the first time you've launched Logic or not, but let's assume that's already been done. So the first time when you launch Logic, it'll come up with this by default, where it's asking you, what do you want to create? Do you want an empty project? Do you want live loops? Do you want to use tutorials, demos, whatever? Normally in this class, you'll just always start with an empty project. So I'm going to click that and choose, and it brings up the Logic screen. The first thing Logic asks you to do is to create a track or multiple tracks. So in most cases in this class, we'll actually click on software instrument, and that's the type of track we'll create. Notice that yours may not look exactly like this. It might look like this with fewer details. I always like to see the details, so I have that open. But again, you can adjust that if you want. As you can see, the details are showing when I create the software instrument, it's going to be an empty channel strip. By default, it might have default patch, which is actually going to bring up an electric piano sound. I like it being empty, and then I'll add whatever I want after that point. Okay, so I'm going to click Create. And what you see then in Logic is a big gray screen with lots of gray sections of the screen. So to go through kind of these different areas, this first big, huge dark gray area is the main part of the screen, which makes sense, it's the biggest. And this is the arrange section. So it's where we actually see the music that's in your projects and where you can arrange them, moving them around, adding things, that type of stuff. To the left of that is the track list. So this is showing each track. It's right now we have a single track that's empty, there's no content, and it hasn't even been assigned to an instrument, it just says instrument 1. Within the track view, I can mute a track, meaning it is silent. I can solo the track, meaning every other track is muted, but this one is soloed. I can have record enable on or off. I've got a volume slider. That's just the overall volume. You see it by default is 0 dB, 0 decibels, meaning the signal is not being boosted or cut. It's just the original signal. And then to the right is the pan pot. Pan's short for panoramic, so that's letting me adjust where I'm hearing it on the left side or the right side of my headphones or speakers. Get that back at 0. To the left of that is, by default, the inspector shows up. The inspector is showing whatever track you have highlighted. If I had multiple tracks, I'll add another one. Got instrument 1 and instrument 2. So when I click on instrument 1, there are various things that will tell me what track I'm on. Instrument 1. The very bottom of this area says instrument 1, and notice when I click instrument 2, it changes to whatever one. That's usually a little more obvious once you assign an instrument to that. I'm going to delete that track. Okay, so I'll have this single track. I have both a way to look at regions, which I'll explain in a bit, or in another tutorial, and then I have an instrument details that I can change as well. On the far bottom left corner, you'll have the actual channel strip call this a channel strip, for that track that you have selected. It's basically like a strip on a mixer. If you've ever seen a mixing or recording console, you'll see these faders that can go up and down. Notice that if I pull this down, it's also pulled this volume up in the track. So those two are linked to each other. They will adjust them, as is the pan pot. They're also linked to each other. So get that back where it was. Here we go. Whoops. Okay, back in the Unity game. And I also have ways that I can add effects and various stuff, which we'll get into later. Over on the far right, you can open up another panel. Logic is an application that has lots of built-in windows. Instead of opening up a lot of separate windows, they bring in these panes from different areas. So if I click these buttons across the top right, it'll open up a pane on the right based on what it is that I've clicked on. Also across the very bottom, if I go to the top left corner, I've got these 3 buttons, and it'll bring up a pane from the bottom. So I could potentially have 4 different panes going on. I've got my main arrange area, I've got this right pane, I've got this bottom editing area, and the left my inspector or my browser. So lots of stuff that I can show, but in essence, 4 different areas of the screen. Let's get rid of all that. Okay. All right, so let's go more of this tour. So if you go to the very top left, you'll see some buttons, 4 buttons in a row. The one that's selected right now, the I, is the inspector. any of these, if you point to them, a little pop-up will tell you what it is. If you click on this little question mark, now anything you point to, you'll see this little quick help here that'll basically tell you whatever it is you're pointing to. Kind of nice. It used to be this annoying little yellow thing that would pop up like it did a second ago, this big yellow thing all over the place. Now they just made a little box for it, so anything you click on, you're like, what is this? It'll tell you over in that quick help. If you don't need that, just close it. To the farthest left, the first button is the browser, or sorry, the library browser. So if you click on that, you'll see a library, which is showing you lots of different sounds that you can load into your tracks. Now, right now we have an instrument or a software instrument track, so it's loading up a library of software instruments. If you had an audio track selected, it would actually show a library of various plug-in combinations of different effects and things. So right now we've got sounds, and I could just say, oh, I want orchestral, and I want a brass sound, and I want a French horn. And then it's going to load up that instrument into my track. So that's how the library works. Other buttons, as I mentioned, these 3 buttons will open up that bottom area. One is what's called Smart Controls. One is your mixer, so any tracks that you have, you'll see is like kind of a traditional mixing board across the bottom. And then the scissors tool or button is bringing up various types of editors, ways that you can edit your music, whether that's audio or MIDI type of information. So we continue across the top section. We come to what you probably could guess is rewind, fast forward, stop, and play. Pretty standard icons. This is called the transport. Transport controls, as I just mentioned, let you fast forward. You've got this thing called the playhead, which is showing where you are in your music. So if I hit play, you'll see that playhead moving. Okay, we're about to hit 9. And then I can stop. Notice that the stop button has also, when it's not playing, it's a box for stop, but when you're not playing, it's an arrow to the left with a line, which if you click that will make it go all the way back to the beginning. Now very, very early on, you'll learn that there's a much more convenient keyboard shortcut to use, which is the space bar. The space bar will play, the space bar will stop. Play, stop. So it's much easier than grabbing your mouse and clicking up there. Also, the return key on your keyboard will do the same as this button, return it back to the beginning. So stop, play, stop with your space bar, return key to get back to the beginning is much easier to use than clicking up here. Obviously, this one you could guess is the record button. So if you click that, it will start recording, although it may give you a count in, as we'll talk about in just one moment. This next one is called the cycle button. If you click that, you see how this yellow bar appears, which I can move anywhere that I want. The cycle is basically saying if I hit play, it's going to start at 5 where this cycle begins, and it's going to play through, and then it's just going to keep looping over and over again. They don't call it a looper in Logic because they use the term loops for something else. But this will, again, I'll hit play with my space bar, and you'll see that it is just going to play through those 4 bars, and then it's just going to loop back and keep going over and over and over again until I stop. If you don't want that on, you can either click the button, or you can even just click where this yellow bar is, and that'll turn it off as well. To the right of that are our display. By default, we will be able to see the bar or the measure that we're on, where the playhead is, and the beat. So right now, if I move this A to this 9, it's showing, oh, we're on bar 9, beat 1. Don't worry if you're not quite sure what bars and beats and all that means. We'll get to that later. Tempo is the next section, so how fast I want this to go. Right now, by default, it's 120 beats per minute. If I turn on my metronome, I can hear that. If I want to slow that down, I can either click and drag right there to drag up and down to a faster, slower tempo, or I can double click and I can just type what I want that to be. Much slower tempo, right? Let's put that back on 120, just in case. To the right of that are time signatures and key signatures, which you may not know exactly what that means, and that's okay for now. You don't even have to really pay attention to those. Most popular music is in 4/4, 4 beats per bar. C major is just the key, and that will really only apply to if you're using loops and other things that pay attention to that. If you look just to the right of that, there's a little arrow, and this will allow you to change what you see in this display. Right now the default is beats and project, so it's showing you the beats and bars and some project information, but I can make that either larger. Okay, that's nice, I guess. I can also see beats and time, so I'm seeing both bars, beats, but also time. I can also say, I want that larger and more details. I could also just see beats. I could also just see time. Or you can do what I do, which is put it on custom, where it shows lots of stuff. You may say, I don't need to see that much stuff, but it shows everything. It shows me time, it shows me beats and bars, so if I go back to the beginning, hit return, I see it's starting on bar 1, beat 1, and then these smaller groupings of the beat. And it's showing me time. One note on time, this is actually showing SMPTE time code, which is used for synchronizing various different applications, especially in film and stuff. And it's a little confusing because you may look at it and think, oh, I'm on, an hour has gone by. That's not the way SMPTE works. SMPTE basically works, you're in the first hour, you're within the first hour, 0 minutes have gone by so far, and 1 second has gone by. So it's a little confusing because this won't change. I mean, it's already on 1. It's never going to be 0. It's always within the first hour. And when you say 59 minutes later, suddenly that would say, now you're in the second hour. Not that you'll ever create music, probably that's 59 or an hour, more than an hour long, right? So anyway, just keep that in mind, that is showing me there's 1 second, 2, 3. So it's showing me seconds here, minutes, and then of course hours. Okay, but I can see more information here, but you can put it on whatever view that you like. Don't worry about these 3 buttons. They're kind of more specialized buttons we won't really need. To the right of those it says 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a picture of an old metronome, those type of timekeeping devices you may have seen where it's like a pendulum going back and forth. This button, the 1, 2, 3, 4, is basically saying, do you want to count off before you record? I'll demonstrate. Got that at the beginning, and I'm going to click the record button, and what I will hear, because this is on, is 4 clicks, and then you'll start to see the playhead move. So it's basically 4 clicks to get ready, and then you record. 2, ready, go. And now it's recording. Okay, so if you don't want to play it and you just wanted to immediately start recording, that's what you would do. If you don't want to hear the click track at any time, you can turn that off. You can also right click on it and you'll get some options like, I only wanted to click during count in. I wanted to click while playing, or not. And you can of course turn that on and off by clicking on it. This is a volume control, so it's a master volume. However, I wouldn't suggest you really mess with that. It's probably best to leave it at its original setting. You'll set volume within individual tracks or on the interface you're using in the lab of turning up the volume from there. To the right, you have finally some 4 buttons that again open up this panel that appears in the right. Really in this class, probably the only one we'll use will be this 3rd one, which looks like a little roller coaster loop-de-loop, and that's the loop browser. So it's showing you a bunch of loops, which I will talk about in the next demonstration. So that's pretty much it as far as an introduction of how everything works, where it's located, but as we go in explaining other things, you'll kind of see how it all works. So go on to the next video to see how to drag in a loop and start creating some music.